Shizu Delta's character build is designed for maximum damage output. With an attack value higher than that of Demiurge, she is deadly both with her ranged weapons and in melee combat. The scarf she wears grants her also the ability to become completely invisible, allowing her to sneak up on opponents and get into optimal shooting positions. Therefore, she is also known as the Sneak and Charge Maid. Lupus Regina's character build is very well balanced. While she is a healer and magically gifted, she also possesses the necessary attack and defense power to hold her own in melee combat. In addition to physical attacks, she can also unleash powerful spells. Furthermore, Lupus Regina Beta is a lycanthrope, a werewolf, allowing her to transform into a powerful and presumably highly skilled melee beast. Naberal Gamma's character build essentially turns the Pleiades into a magical laser. Her physical attributes, such as attack and defense, are abysmal, but she compensates with tremendous magical power. Thanks to her teleportation ability, she can evade attacks and unleash potent spells like Chain Dragon Lightning from a distance. Entoma Vasilisa Zeta has a well-rounded character build. Their attack and defense and magical abilities are well balanced. Her strength lies in summoning powerful insects as an entomancer, with whom she can fight. She is essentially Overlord's equivalent to the Tyranids from Warhammer 40k. Additionally, as a talismancer, she can unleash buffs and special effects through her talismans, and therefore she is deployed as support behind the Pleiades front lines. Yuri Alpha's character build is primarily focused on melee combat. As an undead, she has limitless endurance and can tirelessly stand at the forefront of battles. Undead are also immune to things like fear, sleep, disease, hunger and thirst. With her high attack and defense capabilities, Yuri Alpha deals devastating damage in melee combat and possesses the agility to evade and counterattack. Even though the Theocracy of Slain suspected that Momon the Adventurer and Ainsul the Sorcerer King were secretly working together, they considered it almost entirely out of the question that the appearance of a powerful vampire, which attacked the Black Scripture, or the arrival of the demon Emperor Yaldabaoth, was actually a single coordinated action centrally planned and controlled by an unknown force. So they are still in the dark about how powerful Nazarick truly was. The Cuts plane seemingly has its own consciousness. For example, the otherwise thick mist that hovers over it clears exactly once a year, precisely at the time when the Kingdom and the Baharut Empire engage in their annual war. Therefore it could well be that this plane is the largest undead and basically the largest entity in the New World by a significant margin. The Theocracy of Slain was anything but thrilled about Momon and the fact that the alleged hero of humanity would now work as the enforcer of the Sorcerer King, and they suspected that Momon and Ainsul were likely secretly collaborating. This suspicion arose because the recruitment of the allegedly strongest hero of humankind proceeded far too smoothly. Did you know that the armor of Momon, concealing Ainsul identity, or later that of Pandora's Actor, was initially created by Ainz using his magic, but that it had been later actually crafted from genuine metal, namely adamantite, and this was done to make it even more challenging to unveil Momon's identity, as if people were to discover that the armor was created by a mighty caster, they would naturally question how a supposedly powerful warrior could wear it. Did you know that the seawater in the oceans of the New World in Overlord is actually not salty, but consists of fresh water? Not only does this fact make the irrigation of fields in coastal areas way easier, but it also seemed to be beneficial for aquatic life. From colossal water dragons and coastal lizardmen to mermen who bear a suspicious resemblance to the deep ones from the Lovecraft mythos. There's a diverse range of fantastic life forms to be found in the water of the New World. Although Ain's body is undead, he can still sense many things that he shouldn't be able to. For instance, he can smell, hear, and speak, even though the organs for these functions are absent. His bones can also feel touch and even warmth, as demonstrated when Ainz bathed in the hot springs. However, Ainz can no longer taste, since he no longer requires food to exist. And another special part of his body did also not make it into the new world. Ainz Ulgon would see the new world with different eyes if he were not under the influence of his emotional damper. He already noticed that something was wrong with him when he observed the supposed Knights of Barut attacking the villagers of Karn. If he were to lose his emotional damper, he would probably think much more negatively about the world than he does now. Mare and Aura are among the few non-heteromorphic creatures in the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Therefore, they will age and eventually die, unless something extraordinarily happens. However, Auriel Omega is also a human, but she is immortal. So there should be possibilities, such as using Ainz Ulgon's Wish Ring to halt the aging process once the twins become adults. The reason why Albedo is still a virgin, despite being a succubus, a love demon, is that Ainz changed her character description just before being transported into the new world. Originally, Albedo was very liberal regarding intimate encounters, which would have allowed her to ride her warbicon, among other things, which famously does not tolerate virgins on its back. Even though Ainz Ulgon wants to peacefully coexist with the inhabitants of the new world, the Floor Guardians and most NPCs believe that his strategy of coexistence and peace is merely a clever deception. They think it's a tactic to deceive the inhabitants and lull them into a false sense of security, making it easier to strike later. In other words, they see Ainz's strategy, his master plan, as a ruse, rather than as a genuine project. Rubedo, despite being the younger sister of Albedo, is much more stronger than her, and even stronger than the strongest player in the Great Tomb of Nazarick, with the wonderful nickname of Touch Me. And the reason for her immense power lies in the fact that her creation was not like other NPCs. She is likely a golem, powered by a world-class item, a caloric stone, serving as her core. And this would also explain why she can be booted up, like a personal computer. When Ainz Ulgon disappeared in the bonus volume of Evil Eye, the Great Tomb of Nazarick was not pleased. It is speculated that they fervently began the search for their own overlord immediately, thus annihilating the three surrounding countries, namely the Theocracy, the Empire, and the Kingdom, in the process of it. Entoma Vasilisa Zeta from Overlord may look like an innocent maid who wouldn't hurt a fly, but she is not only a member of the Pleiades Battlemaids, but is also in reality a giant spider and an entomancer, an insect summoner. Her mask, her sword, her whip, and even her very own voice are all just insects, and she also preys on other insects. The reason why the Shivas from Kokuto's personal guard refer to Climb as the last human in the Palace of Rolente, even though Renna was also present in the throne room, is quite simple. Renna, after poisoning an orphanage full of children, betraying her homeland, and striking down her own father, was already far more demon than human. And even before Renna took her father's life, Climb noticed an ashen scent clinging to the princess. The reason for why Rudius Gereirat could speak so many languages and learn them was, on the one hand, that he had resolved not to be a lazy loser in his new life anymore. However, he also had the support of two people, namely Ghislaine and Roxy Migordia, whom these foreign languages were their own respective mother tongues. Additionally, Rudius had the advantage that a child's mind generally learns languages way faster than an adult one is able to. Without Ainz Ulgon's battle against Clementine and Naberal's victory over Khajiit, Iwan Tel would have fallen, because Khajiit's numerous undead would have simply overwhelmed the city, therefore allowing Clementine to escape, since with Ivantel transformed into an undead haven, the Theocracy would simply not have the necessary forces available to pursue her and to deal with this undead city. If Ainsulgon had entered the new world as a level 1 skeleton mage, he could have died right at the beginning. Alongside threats like ogres and goblins, Ainz could have been easily killed by the hands of the villagers in Karen, because despite his peaceful intentions, he would have been viewed as an enemy to all life, because he's undead. And if he had encountered the Sunlight Scripture, who was nearby, Ainz would undoubtedly have been eradicated. Without Ainsulgon's arrival in the new world, all members of Team Foresight, including Archer, would still be alive, since she had decided to participate in one last raid, and then take her two younger sisters in order to escape, thus avoiding throwing their lives away for their ungrateful parents that would just accumulate more and more debt, no matter how much money Archer would have given them. And without the raid on the Grey Tomb, her team's last mission likely wouldn't have ended fatal. Without Ainsulgon's intervention, the Sunlight Scripture could easily have wiped out Gazav Stronov and his warrior troop, thus severely weakening the Kingdom of Riestais by eliminating its best warriors and its strongest soldier in the process. This was also actually the goal, as the Theocracy aimed to assist the Empire in taking over the corrupt kingdom in order to allow its vast resources to be better utilized by humanity. Even though Emperor Jerknif weakened the kingdom greatly through his annual wars and could have theoretically, at any point, deployed the 6 legions to capture Ivantel while keeping still 2 in reserves after destroying the royal army, Jerknif intended to commence the conquest only after the undead Katz plane disappeared, or at least became controllable, because otherwise conquering the kingdom would have resulted in a hostile plane full of the undead in the middle of his now enlarged empire. In order to protect the world items in the Great Tomb, one must use a ring of teleportation to access the otherwise completely isolated treasury chamber. If that's not challenging enough, there's another password-protected door preventing entry into the deepest part of the chamber, and even if one overcomes this, Pandora's actor awaits any intruder inside. And finally, the Avataras of the other 40 guild members will attack anyone delving too deep into the treasure chamber, without unequipping the teleportation ring, the Ring of Ainsulgon, and even removing it from the inventory. Did you know that the spell Maxima's magic is meta magic, ensuring that the damage caused by spells like Chain Dragon Lightning or Fireball is consistently, and at the maximum? This type of magic is unlocked later in the game, and in Yggdrasil Online, it should essentially remove RNG, random numbers, from the endgame, and make every spell's damage predictable without luck ruining one's strategy or providing unfair advantages. So Overlord has thoughtfully considered how an actual video game would function in its endgame. Not all undead creatures in the world of Overlord are automatically affected by mind control and emotional dampening. While Ainz and Yuri Alpha suffer from it, Sheltir Bloodfallen, a vampire for example, is very lively and experiences strong emotions, and is therefore not under the influence of an emotional dampener. In general, this dampener is a result of immunity to mind control, so any undead and any creature not immune to this control is also not emotionally regulated. Although Gazav Stronov is considered to be the strongest man in the kingdom, he would be hopelessly outmatched against Azud Eindra, since Azud's armor is overpowered for the new world, and thus dragons, players, or NPCs are needed to defeat him. However, without his armor, Gazav would easily be stronger than Azud, as all his skills are focused on controlling the armor. Despite Evil Eye being a powerful vampire princess, she was defeated by Rigid Bear's Karoo in battle. Consequently, Evil Eye had to take her place in the Blue Roses, since Rigid is starting to age, as the spell keeping her alive weakens with each day, and she needed a replacement. Hence why Rigrid challenged her in the first place. And Platinum Dragonlord also noted that she is or was one of the very few who could actually defeat Evil Eye in combat. Queen Kalka Besaris and Remedios of the Holy Kingdom had two differently and fundamentally opposing worldviews. If a demi-human, with whom the Holy Kingdom has been fighting for centuries, were to grow up with a human child, help them, adopt and defend human values, Kalka would have no problem if it would peacefully coexist in human society. Remedios, on the other hand, would kill the demi-human child without hesitation or remorse, simply because it is a demi-human and all demi-humans according to dogma are evil, regardless of their behavior. In many ways, Kalka Besaris' rise to the throne is the exact opposite of Renna's fate, while her older brother Caspond willingly gave up his birthright so that Kalka, who was better suited for ruling, could realize her vision of a just and secure realm. Zanek and Barbro fought for the throne with all they had, causing a split in the land and potentially sparking a civil war just to secure their own throne. And Renna, the seemingly kind and intelligent Golden Princess, was completely overlooked in all of these dynastic struggles. Remedios' sister Kilat Custodius pretty much the exact opposite of Remedios. She is an enormously powerful caster, and her espionage, her informal network, and intrigues are very potent and sublime. And while her actions and methods are morally questionable, they are simply necessary to secure the throne of Queen Kalka Besaris. So while Remedios would never deviate from her rigid dogmas, the end often justified any means for Remedios' sister, even if those means were amoral and unjust. The reason why Remedios had not to deal with tactics and strategy so far is quite simple. Her younger sister, Kilat Custodio, is a master strategist and very skilled in securing the reign of Queen Kalka Besaris, using information and intrigues, and this allowed Remedios to focus entirely on her role as a warrior. She basically outsourced her brain. The reason Queen Kalka Besaris had such a hard time establishing herself at court, despite her beauty, intelligence, magical power, and her vision for a better nation, is that she unexpectedly ascended to the throne after her older brother, Caspond Besaris, relinquished his claim to it. The situation contrasted sharply with what happened in Rhys Ties, where Barbro and Zanek fought for the throne. Moreover, it did not sit well with the southern part of the land, which had high expectations for Caspond's coronation and invested heavily in this new regent. The undead in the New World may disdain all life, but they can also restrain themselves and temper their hatred. They can even coexist with the living if it serves their interest, and to that end, the Elder Lich Devanok collaborated with Zero and the Six Arms, offering Zero his immense magical power in exchange for a mentor and an opportunity to hone his skills. Despite his initial defeat against Succulent, Climb managed to win against the Illusion Maniac in the rematch, because he now learned Succulent's tricks, fought in full armor, received support from Lockmire in the battle, and after a targeted kick to the 2 mana orbs of Succulent, Climb was finally able to eliminate him with a sword thrust. Seba's carefulness when he confronted Pershurian was because of his supposed ability to split dimension, which reminded him of his creator and his dimensional slash technique. In hindsight, Sebas was naturally surprised to discover that the ability of Pershurian was merely a cheap trick, as he effortlessly caught the tip of the whip-like sword. Although Succulent the Illusion Maniac is a member of the Six Arms, the enforcers of the criminal syndicate of the 8 Fingers, he stands out as the weakest among them, and his illusion abilities and swordsmanship are relatively ineffective in combat against an equally skilled opponent. Nevertheless, due to his high work ethic and sheer ruthlessness, Succulent remains useful enough to keep him employed. Despite formerly belonging to the Eight Fingers, the various wings of the organization often hindered and combated each other. This fragmentation, the resulting competition, and the general mistrust led investigations against the Eight Fingers to often stall, since everyone was so careful and splintered, thus making it very challenging to grasp the organization as a whole. The holy sword Salfarisia, carried by Remedios, has the ability to inflict particularly devastating damage against malicious beings, those with bad karma. However, the opponent targeted by Salfarisia's attack must genuinely be evil, and a mere condemnation by Remedios or other carriers of the sword is by no means sufficient. The emotional dampener that Ein Sulgon has serves as a protection against strong emotions. However, Eins can still feel pain, but not to the extent that it would affect his judgment. Thus Eins could act as if the fire that engulfed his body had no effect on him, while the subsequent holy magic from Shaltir seemingly shattered him in her own eyes, while in truth it remained almost ineffective against him, while fire was truly dangerous to him. But nonetheless, thanks to his emotional damper, he could pull this deception off. Even though Ein Sulgon's emotional damper makes him immune to prolonged intense emotions, weaker emotions such as worry, excitement, or stress can accumulate over weeks and months. This becomes so severe that Eins, spoiler alert, collapsed in the Holy Kingdom because he could not longer withstand the stress he had been exposed to for months. The reason why, spoiler alert, Eins perceived Nea Baraya as someone who deeply despised him was simply because she had very intimidating and sharp eyes that constantly appeared angry. But when Eins closed his own eyes and only listened to her voice, which sounded normal, he was able to assess Nea better. The reason why Eins was so lenient and caring and protective towards Tuare is that she was the older sister of Ninya, whom provided him with a book that gave him a lot of general knowledge about the New World. For example, it warned Eins about the frost dragons of the Elysian Mountains. The reason why Ein Sulgon likes Grasp Heart, a 9th tier death spell, so much is quite simple. It stuns the opponent for a few seconds if it fails, and that was extremely important. Many players and NPCs at level 100 would have stats and resistances far too high to be killed by insta-death magic. However, thanks to the stun effect, Ein Sulgon still denies the opponent the opportunity to attack or counter. For Ein Sulgon, even low-tier spells are still useful, because he can boost their strength with meta magic, which is called boost magic. For example, the spell Magic Arrow became a serious threat to Shaltir Bloodfallen after Ein Sulgon had buffed it. The reason why fire spells are very dangerous in dungeons is that they deplete the limited oxygen in the rooms, putting adventurers exploring these dungeons at risk of suffocating through their own spells. Explosion magic is considered useless magic for several reasons. Firstly, it requires enormous resources and time to learn, and ordinary people, who are not Crimson Demons, would spend a lifetime studying to master this magic. And even if one manages to learn it, it cannot be used in dungeons, confined spaces, or in cities. And it also destroys any loot that monsters could drop. One of the reasons why Rudius Greyrat had not learned any really powerful spells above the Saint tier is quite simple. Rudius can buff his normal spells by infusing them with a significantly larger amount of mana. For example, the stone cannon that shredded Bardigani was stronger than magic at the Emperor tier, even surpassing the spell Cumulonimbus he learned from Roxy Migurdia as a child. Did you know that Lupus Regina Beta, the Smiling Sadist, is not only revered as an idol by the regular maids in Nazarick because she is part of the Battlemaids, but she is also furthermore considered to be an icon of good luck due to her friendly demeanor. There is a very interesting connection between Cersei Lannister and Queen Marika. Cersei made it clear to her father Tywin that she would rather bring about the downfall of House Lannister than watch her son Tommen being torn between Tywin and Queen Marjorie. Meanwhile, Queen Marika the Eternal shattered the Elden Ring when the greater will allowed Rani to steal a fragment of the Death Rune from her shadow, which her assassins used to kill her firstborn child, Godwin the Golden. The red orb carried by Ainsul gone within his body was long suspected to be a world-class item, and it was confirmed to be one in Volume 14 or Season 4, because it was established that world items can penetrate the world-separating barrier of Platinum Dragonlord's armor, and Ainsul lost visual contact with everything that was going on inside of the barrier when he temporarily removed his world-class item for a few seconds. The reason why Princess Renna lacked any political power was that she was the third-born child of King Ramposa, and that her true value lay, at least from the point of view of society, not in her abilities as a political figurehead, but in her ability and her value as a spouse, as a way to tie a powerful noble to her father's side by marrying him. Princess Renna is, in my opinion, not fundamentally evil, although she betrayed her family and her land to pursue a relationship with Climb. It was only because this had been the path of least resistance. If she had been with Climb earlier, she might have supported the Kingdom of Rias ties, and similar to the Empire of Baharut, submitted it to the will of Ainsul Gone in exchange for being allowed to live. The sword Razor Edge poses a considerable threat to Ainsul Gone, as it can inflict damage despite all his immunities to him. Moreover, Ayn suspected that Razor Edge may have been capable of cutting world items, and had Climb's sword strike succeeded, it could have resulted in Ain's losing his world item.